We're all going to die.
And there's no way of getting out of it.
But take a step back. As they say, use your time wisely.
Now, I'm not going to divulge too much into this. When it comes down to it,
The key is living in the moment.
Clowning around the world. Without further ado, please welcome Alex.
I was gonna start off my presentation with a little exercise. Actually, it's more of an experiment. So I want everybody in the audience to stand up. Again. And sit down if you know what you're going to be doing and where you're going to be between now and the day you die. Ready? That means you're going to sit down. How about in 20 years? You know what you're going to be doing and where you're going to be. How about in 10 years? 5. Not what you want to do, but what you're going to be doing. In 5 years, anybody know? What about in 2 years? Awesome. How about next year? How about next month? How about tomorrow? Okay, those of you still standing, stay standing, because it's just terrible planning on your part. So I have to scroll to PDF. Okay. So, what I'm getting at is that most people don't really know about their future. But the funny thing is that when you're my age, that seems to be the #1 topic of discussion. Everyone's asking you, what are you going to do when you're finished with school? What are you going to do with the rest of your life? What are you going to do this weekend? And I don't really want to answer either of those questions. Honestly, this stage in my life is probably the most confused I will ever be about my future. I guess these questions don't really act as actual questions, but more as a reminder that you should be thinking about your future. Otherwise, one day it'll catch you off guard and bite you in the ass. And keep rolling until there's nothing left. Funny thing is, there were times in my life where I knew exactly what I wanted to do. When I was 5, I wanted to be a paleontologist. Yeah, Jurassic Park. But then after that, I wanted to be a professional adventurer, then a space-time traveler, martial arts combat master, secret agent, dad, extreme sports fanatic, mom, pro skateboarder, the drunken writer who lives in, pro surfer, yes, of course, an army soldier, an actor, homicide detective, rock star, circus performer, the chosen one of some long-lost prophecy that links back to the creation of the universe and the powers that guide it. I even wanted to be dead once, just to see what it was like, you know? And everybody wants to know that. Then it hit me. Really, I have no idea what I want to do. Actually, the only thing I'm certain about is of what I don't want to do. Actually, yeah, and that's not to live my life, not up to my, sorry, I just need it. I don't want to live my life and be disappointed what I've done or haven't done. And I don't want to go to college yet, because I don't think I'm ready. You know, I'll be coming out of school, which did engage me, but didn't really, it interested me, but didn't really engage me, and ending up going to college, doing the same thing, not being engaged, and wasting my time. And I want to get a better I want to gain better respect for higher education before I go there and waste my time and the time of others. As we all know, time is the currency of life, so as they say, use your time wisely. I think in many ways, university is not just a higher education in the academic sense, but an easing into the real world, or so they say. It's also an opportunity to explore what society has to offer. But my take is that society is the problem at the moment. Not the idea of society, but the narrow-mindedness of the people who govern it and the oblivious minds of those who make it up. And I take that both of these problems can be cured through awareness. The awareness of what is happening in our global society and how it affects people and the environment. Looking at the world through the idea of a collection of individual countries needing to fulfill their own separate goals, I believe is somewhat selfish and outdated. 2% of the population having 90% of the wealth is outdated. And 30% and 50% of the population needing more than what they can realistically access, and the other 30% just getting by, and the remaining 20% oblivious to their overindulging lifestyle and the outrageous toll that it takes on the environment. All this needs to be outdated. I want to learn why this is happening, not only by looking at facts and statistics, which often develop new ways of the same thing, but I want to explore firsthand. I had a good sentence here. But by creating a personalized learning plan, which will allow me to experience these situations firsthand and hopefully give me a better understanding of the disparities, of the reasons behind the disparities in our world. Amongst all this serious learning, I also just want to have fun. And so I planned out my next 3 years to do just that. I plan on embarking on a bicycle trip around the world, during which I will be performing as a clown and a comedic entertainer, or a comedic entertainer, as a way of engaging people who have far more problems than I will probably ever have, and among other things, just need a laugh. I first came up with this idea around 4 years ago when I was 14. One time, like one of many times, my mom came up to me and asked me, "What are you going to do after school?" And at the time, I wasn't allowed to ride a motorbike. Actually, I wasn't allowed until a few months ago. And so I, partly to get back at her, partly because I thought it was cool, I said, "I'm going to ride a motorcycle around the world." And to my surprise, she said, "That's a great idea. You should totally go through with it. Start planning it." And of course, I didn't start planning it, but I did think of it. I did think of it, and the more I thought of it, the more it started to dawn on me as a conceivable path for my future. A year later, my friend from Hong Kong visited, and I asked him if he wanted to do this trip with me, and he said, yeah. It ended up not working out later on, but he did at first say yeah, and but he didn't want to do it on motorbikes. He wanted to do it on bicycles. He said that motorbikes are too fast. You don't take your time to learn about a place. The whole trip becomes less oriented around the journey and more oriented around the destination. On a bicycle, you get an intimate experience with the land and its people. All of a sudden, climbing up a hill becomes so much more meaningful. The difficulty and the lack of difficulty can add meaning to just about anything. I like the idea, and I started considering the trip more and more that way as I furthered on my green school experience. And yeah, in fact, it was green school that really started motivating me to actually go forth with this project. Before, it was a bicycle trip. Green school actually provided me and others with a motorcycle maintenance class, in which we bought a motorcycle and a broken down old motorcycle and fixed it up and modified it during the class. Also, 2 years ago when I was first introduced to this project, which required us to create a project and talk about it, I obviously chose what I already had, which was the trip. And organizing this grand adventure. The idea of clowning on the trip was added on later. Actually, inadvertently, it also came from my mom. After I asked her, what should I do for community hours, which I owed the school after some misbehaving. She mentioned this non-profit organization called Clowns Without Borders, which, if you heard of Doctors Without Borders, it's kind of the same thing, except the clown version. We go into well, it's meant to be funny, so. Well, it's to help people who need a laugh have a laugh. And if you haven't heard of them, seriously, go look them up, because they're pretty cool. Anyways, she knew that I loved the circus, and actually went to circus school in Paris for a little while, actually just for a month. But and I love to do tricks and tell jokes. So it would be a perfect opportunity for me to improve on skills that I already enjoy and complete this community service that I needed to do. I ended up not doing it in the community service because there was an easier opportunity that was displayed to me, but I did, however, decide to implement it on my trip because I thought that'd be great. It just made things more interesting, and it also allowed me a way to get in and communicate with people through laughter. I knew that to be able to see this project through, many things had to be considered and some completed. I knew pretty much how my trip is going to go. It's going to be separated into 4 different parts, each part gradually getting harder. The role of these parts is meant to act as a motivational goal, each goal gradually moving you further along to your grand end goal. By separating this trip into smaller sections, it also gives me the illusion that it's easier than it actually is. It's kind of like writing an English essay, but I haven't been really good at those either. Well, the first part of my trip, I intend to come back to Bali and say goodbye to my family and friends before I embark on this trip. Then I'll go up through Java, then Sumatra, take a boat across to Malaysia, go up through Malaysia, Thailand, loop back through Cambodia and Vietnam, then go over to Laos, a little bit of China, Burma, into India, then Bangladesh, then finally it ends in Kathmandu, where I'll be meeting up with my godfather who lives there. The second part of the trip is slightly longer. The second part of the trip goes through, well, I have to choose between Tibet or India. Then it's on to the stands. You know, Pakistan, Afghanistan. I'll have to choose between Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, but Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan or Iran. And then I'll have to go through Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. And finally, the mother of all stands, Kazakhstan, which is, I think it's bigger than all the other stands put together. It's really quite big. And after that, it's on to Russia. Of course, I won't be going through all of Russia because That is huge. And then through Europe, which I'm not going to name the countries because they're just too many. And I'll end up in Portugal at the end. The third part of my trip would be first going through South America, then through, eventually, North America. Through South America, I will be going through Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay, Brazil, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname, French Guinea, Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras, Guatemala, Belize. I'd like to go over to Cuba, although it's kind of out of the way, because that's like the land of no American produce, which I would like to see. Then it's on to Mexico and the US. The fourth part of my trip is up through the United States and Canada, all the way to the tip of Alaska, which will bring an end to this big project. Safety is an absolute necessity to cover. So after I planned my trip, I enrolled into the WFR course, which was held at school here. It stands for Wilderness First Responder, which teaches individuals how to respond to injuries when you're in the wilderness and you may not have access to immediate health care, or you won't have access to it in a long time. I also hadn't studied the health, political, and social situations of the countries which I wish to cross, which needs to be done. And, of course, the funding. What's going to fund this? I entertained the idea of getting sponsors and crowdfunding, but getting just how to start, I don't know, I kept getting blocked there. And also I felt embarrassed to ask for money. So I decided to do it the good old way and work for it. Which would also give me some insights being a working class citizen in a society which later on I may like to see changes in. It'll also give me time to finalize the preparation and planning for this trip. To get back to the point, with the pressure of the future, the need for a classic higher education after school that is blindly accepted, and is blindly accepted societal value, the philosophical reflection of the arrangement of our present society, which I wish to see change. I am setting myself to study for a better understanding of the world I've been placed in. Before I attempt to change it. I also wish to inspire people to go forth with their ideas, no matter how far-fetched or out there they may be, by studying society while cycling around the world, clowning as a way of interacting and engaging communities which I encounter along the way. Well, that's the end of my speech, and have a lovely break.